Richie Rich Show.
Hey, what's up, YouTube? What's going on? What's up? It's Richie Rich here. Late night, ones and twos. I'm on home time. Thank God I am. Um, I don't know. I just thought I'd tap in what you guys haven't really been on. It's kind of late. I thought about going live, but I was like, it's too late to do live, and I'm sure nobody is wide awake. Anyway, I thought I'd make a video. Right, I had a conversation with a friend of mine earlier. We were talking. Conversation in trucking about money is very common. Everybody wants to know how you're doing, and they want to know why you're doing what you're doing. Okay. I've been a lease operator for 10 years, I say. I did company for like 2 years. I did Stevens Company. And the question was asked, why are you just doing company? why are you a lease driver? Why are you just doing lease? And I'll be honest with you. Now that I look back on it, the only reason why anybody does lease, right, is because you make more money. And the sad part about the whole thing is these truck companies could pay you better as a company driver, but I feel like they don't. Okay. I was looking at one of the highest paying truck companies out here, as far as I know, for company, which is Crete. Okay. Crete will pay you between 61 cents a mile and 60 cents a mile, per mile. And see, they always had a high pay, right? And I was always told, like, you should go work for Crete. You should work for Crete. And I'm sure they're a good company. I am. But what I heard about what Crete does, and what a lot of those companies do that pay you high, is, they may pay you 61 cents a mile, but you only get like 1,900 miles or 1,800 miles a week. Okay. And when you average it out, it's like $1,200. Okay. No trucking company could survive, paying you to run 3,000 plus miles a week at 61 or 66 cents a mile and still kind of be in business. Okay. The name of the game in trucking is to get a lot of work out you for cheap. Okay. And that's basically what it is. Being a lease operator, the reason I done it, because it kind of got you to the money a little faster, to better pay. Like, I have a real funny feeling, I don't like to be on the road for less than, at this point, $1,500 to $2,000 a week. Okay. When you're a company driver, okay, there's things you have to take in consideration. There's probably only one company. Well, there's like 3 or 4 company driver jobs I would do to make good money. And that would be Walmart, number one, because Walmart pays you for everything you do. Okay. They even pay you to sleep in the truck, which is amazing. A lot of their drivers are doing like, every 2 weeks, I think I saw a guy's check for like $3,700 or something every 2 weeks. That's just pretty good. Okay. That's what you want. Let me see who else. FedEx and UPS, if you work for the company, not as a contractor. Okay. But you actually work for the company where you get benefits and stuff like that. And see, that's the biggest thing, that when I first got into trucking, I made that major mistake thinking that the benefits with these truck companies would be good, and they were awful. Here, I'll tell you guys a quick story. So I went to go work for Stevens. You guys know I started with Stevens, and I started as a company driver. And I figured, well, I need benefits and health insurance and stuff like that. And I think at the time, Stevens was paying me like 35 cents a mile or something like that. And, I used to run hard as a hell, but what used to happen is when I get my paycheck, right, it should be so small. I'm talking $400 or $500, and mainly because I took their benefit package, which was awful. Okay. A lot of these mega carriers have awful benefit packages. And one thing that I'm finding out, right, and this is go for Stevens or any one of them, what the drivers get in health and benefits, right, as far as dental and vision and shit like that, the executives don't get. They get something better. Okay. And I kind of find that out the hard way what they offer us, the drivers, is crap, and it's expensive and doesn't barely cover anything. I never forget, I took the health package out for Stephen Transport, and I think it cost me something like, because I put my kids on there and everything, and I'm thinking I'm about to pay, not a lot of money, maybe $100 or something, or $150. Man, they end up taking like $300 a week for that package. Okay, so if you think about it, 35 cents a mile, and you're running 3,000 miles a week, maybe. Truth is, over-the-road drivers, especially in the refrigerated division, it's impossible to run 3,000 plus miles a week. Okay, number one, you're always sitting at doors waiting to get loaded or unloaded. Case in point, I was at Walmart the other day for like 7 hours. Okay, unless you're on a dedicated drop and hook, where you can always drop and go. Being a live load refrigerator driver, your pay is going to fluctuate greatly. It is, and I found out the hard way. So I used to get a paycheck, right, and it would be like $900 or something like that, and then $330 of the medical benefits and stuff will come out, and I have a $600 paycheck. So after a while, I was like, you know what? I might as well get health insurance on my own, and I might as well go ahead and be a lease operator, because at least I get to the money better. And that's what happens. It kind of forces you. The industry itself forces you to be a lease operator. And that's why for the last, 12 years of my career, 10 years, I've been a lease operator, or owner-op / lease operator. There's not a lot of companies out here that pay well. And so that's my point. It's, other than the ones I named, or unless you work for like a fuel company or something, where you're hauling fuel, But see, I like to make the most money I can. Trucking is like the only job I ever held, right? Where my variation of pay went from $7,000 one week to making $300 in 1 week. And that's working every day, right? Trucking is just it's an individual sport, and it's so wild and extreme, when you're a lease operator. But me and him were talking. He was like, you should just get yourself a company. And a lot of guys in my comments will say that, right? And I'll be honest with you guys. There's probably only one company I will work for at this point, and it'd be Walmart. Honestly, it'd be Walmart. Just the way they do their things over there and how they treat their drivers. Only thing I don't like is the uniform. It can't be comfortable wearing a uniform out here. Now, listen. I know we're all professional truck drivers and stuff like that. We're supposed to be professionals or whatever. But, working in 100 degree with a button-up shirt and like khaki pants, boots on or something, it has to be very uncomfortable. And I'm just thinking about myself being out there. I like to be kind of relaxed and loose fit when you're driving 10 hours a day. That's the only drawback. And the slip seating. The slip seating gotta really suck. When you're always having to switch trucks or share trucks with like 3 other guys. That's the only drawbacks of Walmart that I see. Unless you've been there for a long, long time, do they give you an assigned truck? But that's very rare. Most of the guys do slip seating. And I have a friend who works at the Walmart distribution center in Pennsylvania. And he told me, he was like, he got in one truck one day and it was dirty. So he was like, I don't like telling on people, but he said, I kind of had to. And he walked in there and he told the manager or whoever, and they gave him another truck, but they wrote the other guy up. I don't like that too much. I don't want to have to be telling on anybody. I hate fucking snitches, and I used to be a police, right? But that's one of their problems at Walmart. You get a truck that's not totally clean the way you might like it, or you might have a guy who, now they're not supposed to smoke in the truck, but if he smokes outside the truck and then gets back in the truck, that smell is still there. Okay, and they have to deal with that sometime too. So, but that's the only company I can go see myself working for. Let's talk about my pay. So for the last couple of weeks, The reasons I do lease operation is because my paychecks will tell me why. Um, Last week my paycheck I ran 1,900 miles, and my paycheck take home was like 18. Okay. The week before, because of the holiday, my paycheck was $700 because the holiday on Monday, that Memorial Day. So do you see the extremes of that? You know, the week before, I think 22. The week before that was like 22 or something like that. But those are the wild swings of trucking and leasing. And I don't really see a lot of company jobs that can really pay that. Okay, when you're making 55 cents a mile or 65 cents a mile, and you're not running 3,000 miles a week or so, you're not going to make that kind of money. You're not. You'll probably do. I mean, on the high end, if you don't have any benefits coming out, any taxes, which they do tax the hell out of you, you probably bring home $1,300 a week or something. And for some people, that's good. Okay, I understand. Um, I was watching a video of a young man who was talking about how trucking saved his life. He was from, I think he was from Florida, and he said that he used to work every 2 weeks and bring home like $1,200 every 2 weeks. And now he's bringing home that per week, so he was happy. And I understand. Okay, I understand. There's not a lot of jobs out here where you can make, you know, you can make minimum. Well, you can make decent amount of money. I guess middle class money. I guess you can say. But I don't know. Me and him were just talking, and another point he pointed out to me, right? And you guys will probably agree with this, is the 52 fake out with the companies. And I'm going to tell you what it is. So when I worked for Prime that one year, when I was training and when it was a golden year, my W-2 said I made $250,000. Okay. That was a lie. That was a lie. I probably only really made like 85,000. Okay. And me and him were talking about that. They were like, why did they make you pay all the taxes for that? And you know what? It is true. But, you do have a lot of write-offs, but even with all the write-offs, the fuel and the truck note and, paying the student or whatever, but it is kind of true, it would be awesome if you had a company driver job, right? And you made close to $200,000 a year, net. You bringing that actually home. And see, that's the 52 fake out that a lot of these companies do just to lower their own personal tax liability, put more money in their bank, is that they say you gross $250,000 and you really didn't. You got, and that's the thing, when you're a company driver, you don't have to worry about that. But, being a company driver is just kind of hard. I mean, but see, I'm going to tell you something. We're all company drivers in the standpoint. And see, that's one thing about leasing that me and him were talking about that I really didn't like, and what it is like, they say no forced dispatch, right? But as a lease operator, in the back of your mind, and they know that if you turn down too many loads, they'll let you sit. And then ultimately what happens is you end up owing money before, you owe money before you even make any money. And if you turn down too many loads, they're going to terminate your contract, or they're going to have you sitting. Okay. But as a company driver, you can turn down loads too as a company driver, but you can't do that too often too, right? So it's all the same to me. He was saying something like he thought there was a task force going on that was supposed to end lease purchasing and stuff like that. And I thought I heard that same thing too. But I don't think our government's going to do that, because that's like telling somebody how to run their business. And America, unfortunately, is more for the, companies than the actually employees or people who actually work for these companies. They can, America's system is built on taking advantage of people. And that's exactly what it is, lease purchasing, and even being some of these company driver jobs, because, as a company driver, they could pay you more. They could. I was talking to him, and I was saying, if a company offered like $1 a mile, right? And I know some of you guys are like, yo, Rich, what are you talking about? That sounds crazy. Hear me out, okay? If a company offered like $1 a mile and you drove, 1,800 miles a week or 2,000 miles a week or something like that, first of all, that will help increase on-time delivery because a lot of people will be on time because you're not running as hard. And secondly, that will keep people employed there. It will help with longevity. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, these companies' business model is set up on drivers only being there for a few months. That's why you're a senior driver when you only been there for three months. You have seniority at some of these places. But that will make this industry, I think, in my opinion, a lot better. Because if you paid somebody $1 a mile, okay, let's think about it. And you run 2,000 miles a week, that's $2,000 minus tax, right? So after taxes come out and, health insurance and taxes and all kind of stuff, you might walk away with like $1,600 or $1,500 cash. That's actually decent. That would be worth it to me to be a company driver, okay? And the companies will still make money, and it's not crushing them, and they will have less turnover, But these companies that pay like 50 cents a mile and 45, that's just not enough money to me. I'm sorry, I don't want to be out here on the road bringing in like 600 or 700 bucks a week. Like that's not enough money. I'm sorry, that's not enough money to be living in the truck, and you're basically living in the truck, you know. But it's weird because I say that to people, right? And a lot of people disagree with me on that, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. So would you rather be out here running 3,000 plus miles a week, killing yourself? You know, would you rather be out here having to work every day of the week? Because as a truck driver, we literally work every day of the week, for weeks at a time. If you think about it, and the way the industry is set up, it is set up to make you work yourself to death. It really is. I mean, you got to ask yourself, when the last time you really took a vacation? When the last time you just took it easy without having to be running and worrying about your 10-hour clock, okay? And me and him were talking about it, and he raised some good points, and I raised some good points too. I was like, trucking industry could be revamped. It really could. I mean, yes, I get it. During the COVID times and probably before the COVID times, yeah, we really did make some money. We really did. If you stayed out here and you hustled and stuff like that, you made big checks. Like I said, I've done a lot of things in my life. I never did anything that made me $7,000 in 1 week, or maybe $4,000 in 1 week. Nothing I ever did, nothing. Not even being a police working double overtime when I had to, I think my biggest check as a law enforcement officer one time was probably like 2,500 bucks. And that was like 2 weeks, with some OT on there. So, yes, I made some pretty decent money trucking, but now, things are kind of changing a little bit. Things are getting a little tight, and it was just a thought. Unfortunately, the industry is so based on capitalism and greed, they'll never do it like that. But, only people I can see really doing that like that is like Walmart, because they pay their drivers everything they do, You go to sleep in the truck, you get paid an hourly wage. You pick up a load, drop off a load, you pay for that, It's the activity pay makes it worth it with Walmart. So I see why guys go over there and they're happy and they stay. I'll be honest with you, had they hired me, I'd probably still be there too. But right now, there's a situation that everybody and their grandma is applying to Walmart, and they have very rare job openings now. It's hard to get into Walmart now. If the industry turns around, with what's going on out here, with them cracking down on immigration and cracking down on non-English speaking drivers, and a lot of the money starts going up and the rates start going higher. A lot of people who work for Walmart will leave, and that might leave some openings for the rest of us to get in there. But you know, as of right now, I don't know. I'm just thinking about myself too. I'm just holding on, kind of. I'm just going with the flow. Am I tired of working hard like I do? I'll be honest with you, I am. I ain't gonna lie to you. I've been doing this 12 years. It's funny because me and my guy was talking, and he said, Rich, do you just take 10-hour breaks, and after you're 10, are you up and running? I said, well, it depends if the load is like tight, but if it isn't, man, sometimes them 10-hour breaks turn to like 12 or 13. The other day, and I knew I was tired. I think my 10-hour break turned into like an 18-hour break. Now, I wasn't asleep for 18 hours, but what happens is you'd be up running, your body's up running, and next thing you know, you can't sleep during those 10 hours because see, my body doesn't shut down at 10, 10 hours, you know what I mean? My mind is still up. I'm watching YouTube. I'm looking at TikTok and Snapchat for a couple hours, maybe watching a movie to unwind. Then I eventually fall asleep, and I fall into a deep sleep or something. But it just, it's like that, and it's not routine. Sometimes like the other day, I was running through the night. So I started my clock at like 8 o'clock at night, and I didn't get done till like 10 or 11 or 12 o'clock the next day. And I was up, I was wired, and couldn't go to sleep. Sleeping during the daytime is hard. It is. So I had to stay up until like 7 or 8 when the sun went down, and then I was able to fall asleep. But see, that's how your 10-hour break turns into like 13, 14 hours. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, guys, I'm home for a few days. I really want to stay home for a week, but as a lease operator, you can't do that. I have a problem going into the hole. I have a problem. I don't put money away for time off. My philosophy about that is bullshit to do that. I don't like to have the company in charge of my money, and I like to take my money and invest it in different things. Put it away in my own little investments when I can. So putting money in a time off account is like silly to me. So you just have to control your time off. Generally how you do it is you try to come home on the load, and hopefully the load covers your truck note. But luckily my truck note is not that high. I think I'm only paying $620. Okay, but unlike you Prime drivers and some of you Wilson drivers and shit like that, y'all payments like $1,600 a week, and I'm not making fun of y'all. I mean, you guys are doing what you have to do to put food on the table, but it's just too expensive. That's why I made a video talking about it as being too expensive. And people got pushed back on that too, which makes no sense. I mean, why would you want to give a company $1,600 a week to work? I mean, in hindsight, you're paying to work, which sounds crazy, right? But that's what it is. You're paying to work, and you're paying a lot of money to work, like a lot. That's a lot of money. I mean, $1,600 a week, Jesus Lord. That money can go through to something else, family, retirement. And so that's another thing we talked about too. And what does retirement look like for you? Do you know what I mean? As a lease operator, what does that look like for you? And it's enough to make you cry when you think about it, because it's a shit life. It truly is. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. If you work every day, for 20 years, and you're not making a lot of money, right? Because some lease drivers are struggling out here. Now you'll listen to this. Some lease guys are struggling out here to make a paycheck. So you work every day of your life, okay, for 20 years as a lease operator, okay? And when it's time to retire, there's nothing in the till. There's nothing in the piggy bank, you know? Um, that's a nightmare. I'll be honest with you, that is a nightmare because as a lease operator, there's nobody putting away money for your retirement. There isn't. What you make is what you keep. And see, that's why I always pushed for lease operators to be making $2,000 and $3,000 a week. That's what we should be making. But see, you got a lot of lease operators making only like 12 or 1100 bucks a week, and they have a family, and they got to take care of a family. So how do you put something away when you're making that little bit of money? It takes, unless your lifestyle is cheap, which some of you guys are. Some of you guys, live in states and areas that things don't cost as much as they do other places, but I was talking to my buddy, matter of fact, two of my friends, one who lives in Florida, lives in Orlando. His apartment with his kids is $2,500 a month. Okay, that's a lot of money. That's like $30,000 a year just to live, and he's not home only but 10 or 12 times a year. And then I have a buddy who lived down in Dallas. Okay, his one bedroom apartment was what did he tell me it was, like $1,300 a month. And something going on with Texas where they don't have like rent control, but his renewal came back like at $1,800 a month, and he had to pay it. So when you're paying that kind of money to live and you're not making a whole lot of money, how do you put something away for retirement? See, that's the con of lease purchasing. That's the sword in the back. It's like, okay, listen, you're going to work your life away. Okay, you're going to work 20 years, 30 years doing this. And unless you plan properly, okay, you're not going to have nothing when you're like 70 years old. Because there's no company putting away anything in a retirement account for you. Not even Social Security. Okay, not even Social Security is putting money away for you. Because when you pay your taxes, you're paying taxes on your gross. You're not sending money to Social Security. There's nothing going to be nothing at the end of that line. And see, that's why, me and him were talking, and then, I was reflecting, and I was like, if I had to do it all over again, lease purchasing this long is diabolical. It is. It's diabolical. It really is. But if I had to do it all over again, what I would have done is probably got my 1 or 2 years experience, and try to get on with Walmart, Postal Service, FedEx, or UPS, or whatever union job I could find, in my town, and hop on that. And the reason I say that, because they have protections in retirement. And see, that's the thing you have to think about. Because some of you guys can find good jobs locally. You can, okay? But there's no protection with that. I had a friend who watches my YouTube. He might even comment on this video. Me and him talked one day, and I think he went to go work for an LTL company. What was it? God. It's the LTL company that pulls doubles, and their colors are green and white. He was pulling out of Virginia, out of the Richmond area. And the last I talked to him, he got laid off. He was telling me, he said, yeah, I got laid off. They let me go. I was like, oh my God, you just got with him. He said, I was happy. He used to run from Virginia to Harrisburg and back. And they laid him off, So what kind of protections is there? Do you understand? What kind of protections there? What does that do to retirement? So that's the thing you young folks need to think about, right? Because when you're in your 20s, yeah, you feel pretty strong and healthy, pretty strong and healthy. And then what happens? Next thing you know it, 12 years fly by, or, 20 years or 25 years fly by, and you're 65 with nothing. I mean, not saying nothing as you didn't accumulate some things in life, but retirement. Okay, because you don't want to be an old guy out there driving. I seen it. You don't want to be that. I seen old guys. I seen a couple of them out there. You know, driving in the trucks, hunched over, can barely climb in and out of that bitch. You know. So I don't know. We was just talking. Um, I told him. I said, I can't believe I've been doing this for this long. I really have. And I want to get out of it. I do, but it's hard to get out of it. I mean, it really is, because one, you have to find a job that's going to be able to sustain you like your trucking job. And that's not really easy to do now these days. Okay, there's, like I said, I put my life on the line for the city of Philadelphia, the city of Washington, D.C. And I never made $7 grand a week. Never even made $3 grand a week. Barely made $6 grand a month. Barely. So there's not a lot of jobs that will pay you that, unless you have an advanced degree, you're a medical surgeon or something like that, or a lawyer or some kind of cybersecurity dude. But working a standard job, nah. And so you got to find something to replace that, or you got to dumb down your life. And me personally, I think my life is already dumb. I mean, I don't live in a big mansion. I don't drive too many fancy cars. You know what I mean? But it's just the truth. But me and him were just talking about that. So this is, the reason why I lease is because I want to make the most money I can. But it's kind of a double-edged sword. It really is. Because at the end of the day, I'm not putting any place to get a pension or a retirement or anything. And I got to pay for my medical benefits out of my pocket, which are not cheap, But they're better than what the company would offer. You know what I mean? Even as a company driver, y'all, it's just not enough money, I don't believe. I don't know. Well, anyway, guys, I'm home. I'm going to have me a drink. It's late. I'm going to make some more videos. I might go live tomorrow, maybe. I'm sorry I haven't made videos in a while. I was woofing crazy too, man. I need to get a haircut. Oh, Lordy. Y'all should saw my hair. My clippers have broke on the road. I usually cut my own hair. But I was actually able to get a haircut today. It felt good to be pampered. And that's another thing, haircuts. My haircut, how much my haircut costs? $50. This, $50. Isn't that crazy? Oh, God. Everything's expensive. So that's why you got to make the most money you can out here and then be consistent. You know what I mean? Because everything has gone up, and the pay just hasn't. So anyway, y'all, peace and love. Like and subscribe. Hope I can keep you guys, too long without a video. Anyways, tell me how you feel, if you think company driver is worth it, which it really ain't. I mean, young folks, listen, working for companies like CR England, Swift, who else? JB Hunt, Snyder, who else? Stevens, any company that drive a job, it really ain't good. They're not paying enough. My opinion, they're just not paying enough. And that'd be what it be. So peace and love.